In a distant galaxy, far beyond Earth, the Velkorian Empire ruled over countless worlds. Their society was governed by strict traditions, and emotions were considered a weakness. The Velkorians believed that only through discipline and duty could they maintain their powerful empire. Love, in their eyes, was a luxury, something to be avoided. The Velkorian people followed rigid laws, with little room for personal desires. But not all of them were willing to live by these harsh rules. Lyra was born into this world. She was tall, graceful, and an exceptional warrior, one of the best in her class. She had always been loyal to her people, following their rules, doing as she was told. But as she grew older, something inside her began to change. She couldn't explain it, but she longed for something more than just the cold, disciplined life her people demanded. Lyra's thoughts often wandered to the idea of love, something she had been taught to suppress. She told herself it was impossible. The idea of loving another was forbidden, especially a human. Humans were considered primitive by the Velkorians. They were unpredictable, emotional, and to Lyra's people, they were nothing more than a stepping stone in the grand plans of the Velkorian Empire. Yet, despite the distance between their worlds, Lyra found herself curious about them. Their planet, Earth, was a place. In that moment, she whispered his name softly to the wind, knowing that even if they could never be together openly, her love for him would remain. No matter what happened, she would always carry the memory of him in her heart. Lyra's heart raced every time she saw Marcus. Their meetings, though brief, had become a secret part of her life that she couldn't bear to give up. The thrill of their stolen moments together, the way he smiled when he saw her, the way he always made her laugh. It was all too precious for her to lose. The deeper she fell, the more she realized the risks she was taking. She had heard the whispers around her, the cautious words of her fellow Velkorians. It was only a matter of time before someone found out about her feelings for Marcus. She knew the Velkorian people wouldn't understand. To them, love for a human was an unforgivable weakness. Humans were seen as inferior, a race to be controlled and used, not loved. Lyra had been taught that from a young age. Love wasn't something that belonged to her people. It was a distraction, a flaw, a disease that could tear apart the foundations of their society. But that didn't matter to Lyra. She had already felt the power of love, and she couldn't let go of it, no matter what. It wasn't long before someone noticed. Her fellow soldiers had begun to grow suspicious, noticing the way Lyra's eyes softened whenever she was near the human diplomat. At first, they thought nothing of it, brushing it off as a simple curiosity about the human race. But Lyra's behavior had changed, and it didn't go unnoticed for long. The council was swift to act. They had eyes everywhere, and when they caught wind of the rumors, they wasted no time in investigating. One evening, Lyra found herself summoned to the council chamber, a place where only the highest-ranking Velkorians were allowed to sit. The room was cold, the air thick with tension. The council members, all older and wiser than her, sat in a semicircle, their eyes fixed on her. Lyra stood tall, but inside, her heart pounded in her chest. She knew what this was about. Lyra, the council leader, a tall and imposing Velkorian named Corin, began, his voice low and stern. "We have received disturbing reports about your actions. You have been meeting with the human diplomat, Marcus. This is a grave violation of the laws of our people." Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She had always known this day would come, but hearing it out loud made it feel all too real. She didn't know how to respond, but her eyes never wavered from Corin's. "This behavior is unacceptable," Corin continued. "You are a warrior of the Velkorian Empire. You have been entrusted with our honor. And yet you choose to indulge in a forbidden relationship with a human, a species beneath us. Your actions put the stability of our society in danger." Lyra's heart sank, but she refused to show weakness. She couldn't let them see how much their words hurt. Instead, she stood tall and spoke the truth. "Marcus is not beneath me," she said firmly. "He is not my enemy. He is kind, compassionate, and has shown me a love that I never thought possible." The room fell silent. The council members exchanged glances, their faces twisted in disbelief. To them, her words were nothing short of a betrayal. Lyra's eyes were locked on Corin, and though she felt the weight of his judgment, she did not back down. "This is not love," Corin said coldly. "This is weakness, and it must be stopped. You are hereby stripped of your rank and duties. You will be punished for your betrayal." Lyra's breath hitched, but she refused to show fear. She had expected punishment, but not this. She was taken to the center of the city, where the public would witness her disgrace. The streets were filled with Velcorians, all watching as she was shackled in chains. Her heart ached, but she couldn't bring herself to cry. She was determined to stand strong, even in the face of the scorn of her people. As she was paraded through the streets, the Velcorians threw insults and trash at her. They mocked her, calling her a traitor, a disgrace to her people. Lyra kept her head high, even as the insults stung. She could feel the weight of their judgment, but she refused to let it break her spirit. She whispered Marcus' name softly, as if speaking to the wind itself. "Marcus," she said, her voice barely audible. "I'm sorry. I never wanted this, but my love for you is true. I will never regret it." In that moment, something shifted within her. Despite the cruel treatment she was enduring, despite the pain of being rejected by her own people, Lyra knew that her love for Marcus was stronger than any punishment. It was a love that had changed her, a love that had awakened something inside her that she could never ignore. The city buzzed with whispers as Lyra was led to her cell, the chains around her wrists heavy and cold. But as she sat in the dark, her mind drifted to Marcus. She knew he was out there somewhere, perhaps unaware of the trouble his love had caused her. But no matter the consequences, Lyra refused to regret the love they had shared. It was the one thing that had made her feel truly alive, and she couldn't let it go. The Velcorian Empire might have tried to break her, but Lyra was stronger than they realized. She had known love, and that love would keep her going. No matter what came next, she would fight for it. For Marcus, for herself, and for the hope that someday others would understand. The cold, damp stone walls of Lyra's prison cell were a far cry from the elegant chambers she had once occupied as a high-ranking warrior. Once she had been honored and respected, trusted by her people to protect the Velcorian Empire. Now she was nothing more than a prisoner, her chains heavy and cold, a constant reminder of the punishment she had earned for daring to love a human. For days she had been locked away, her mind a whirlwind of emotions. Anger, regret, and confusion filled her thoughts. Yet through it all, there was one constant, her love for Marcus. No matter how harsh her treatment had been, no matter how cruel her people had been to her, her feelings for him had not changed. They could imprison her body, but they couldn't control her heart. Lyra sat quietly on the cold stone floor, her back pressed against the wall. Her once proud warrior attire was gone, replaced by simple, prison-issued clothing. Her chains rattled with every movement, the sound echoing in the small, dimly lit room. She looked out through the narrow window, her gaze fixed on the distant stars. She could still feel the weight of the public humiliation, the way her people had thrown trash and insults at her as she was led through the streets. But none of that mattered now. The only thing that mattered was Marcus, and the promise she had made to him. As the days passed, Lyra began to wonder if Marcus had heard of her punishment. Did he know that she had been captured? Was he safe? Was he thinking of her as she was thinking of him? These questions haunted her, but she refused to let despair consume her. She had always been a warrior, strong and determined, and she would fight for her love, if it was the last thing she did. The door to her cell suddenly creaked open, and Lyra looked up, her heart racing in her chest. A tall, imposing figure stood in the doorway. Corin, the council leader. He was the one who had ordered her punishment, and now he was here to deliver his final judgment. Lyra stood up slowly, her chains clinking as she did so. She refused to show fear, though the sight of Corin filled her with anger. You've been given a chance to reconsider your actions, Lyra, Corin said, his voice cold and unwavering. But it seems you have chosen to remain defiant. You refuse to abandon this human, even when it has cost you everything. Lyra met his gaze without flinching. I will never abandon him. My love for Marcus is real. It is stronger than anything you or anyone else can do to me. Corin's expression darkened. You are a traitor. You've disgraced your people, and you have dishonored our traditions. You've chosen a human over your own kind. You've broken the laws that have kept our empire strong for generations. And for that, there must be consequences. Lyra felt a surge of anger, but kept her composure. If love is a crime, then I am guilty. But I will not apologize for loving him. He's a good man, Corin. He deserves better than the way you treat him. You fear what you do not understand. Corin's eyes narrowed, and he stepped closer, his presence imposing. You don't understand the consequences of your actions, Lyra. Your love for this human has already begun to cause fractures in our society. You've made us vulnerable. Lyra shook her head. I haven't made anyone vulnerable. It's your hatred of what you do not understand that makes you weak. I may be a prisoner in your eyes, but I have found something worth fighting for, something you will never understand. Corin's lips curled into a thin, cold smile. Then you are truly lost. You will never be free again. Your punishment will be a reminder to the others that this kind of behavior will not be tolerated. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as Corin turned to leave, but before he could walk away, she spoke, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. I don't need your approval, Corin, she said firmly. I will never regret what I've done. No matter how long I am imprisoned, no matter what you do to me, I will always love him. Corin stopped in his tracks and glanced over his shoulder. Then you will die for this foolishness. With those words, he left the room, and the door slammed shut behind him, leaving Lyra in the silence of her cell. Her heart raced, but her mind was clear. She knew the stakes. She knew the Velkorian Empire would stop at nothing to make her regret her actions. But as she sat back down on the cold floor, her thoughts returned to Marcus. She wondered where he was, what he was doing, and if he still thought of her. Though she had been chained physically, Lyra's spirit remained unbroken. She would never stop loving Marcus. No matter the cost, no matter the price, her love for him was something that no prison could contain. And in the depths of her heart, Lyra held on to the hope that somehow Marcus would find a way to save her. Perhaps their love was impossible, but it was worth fighting for. Lyra's heart felt heavy as she was dragged through the streets. The Velkorian guards held her arms firmly, the chains clinking with every step she took. The air was thick with the whispers of the crowd, and the weight of their eyes pressed down on her like 1,000 stones. She could hear their murmurs, their harsh words, but she kept her head high. She would not let them see her fear. She would not let them see her break. The city was large, with towering structures made of smooth, gleaming metal. The architecture was beautiful, designed to showcase the power and wealth of the Velkorian Empire. But to Lyra, the beauty of the city felt like a prison, a constant reminder of the rules and traditions that bound her people. Today, the city felt even more oppressive. Today, she would be punished in front of everyone. Today, her shame would be on display for all to see. As she passed through the streets, the crowd grew larger. The people of the Velkorian Empire gathered around her, their faces full of judgment and contempt. Some whispered to each other, others stared in silence, but all of them seemed to agree on one thing. Lyra had betrayed them. She had broken the laws that had governed their society for centuries. She had dared to love a human. The pain of their judgment was sharp, but it was nothing compared to the feeling of betrayal that had grown inside her. These people, her people, had once been her family. She had fought alongside them, bled alongside them. She had followed their rules, respected their customs. But now she was an outcast. To them, she was no longer a warrior. She was a traitor, a disgrace to everything they stood for. As she walked, some of the crowd began to throw things at her, small rocks, garbage, and food scraps. The objects hit her with a dull thud, the impact sharp and painful. But it was not the physical pain that hurt the most. It was the humiliation, the way they treated her like an animal, as if she were nothing more than a failure to be punished. Lyra gritted her teeth, refusing to show weakness. She would not cry. She would not beg for mercy. No matter what they threw at her, no matter how hard they tried to break her, she would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her fall. Through it all, one thought kept echoing in her mind. Marcus. She whispered his name to herself over and over again, as though his name could be her shield, her strength. She could still remember the warmth of his smile, the kindness in his eyes, the way he had made her feel like she mattered. He had shown her a world beyond the cold, rigid walls of Velcorian society. He had shown her what it meant to truly love. Marcus, she whispered softly, barely audible over the noise of the crowd. But in her heart, the words were clear. She would not give up on him. She would not let them take away the love that had changed her forever. As they reached the center of the city, Lyra was forced to kneel in front of the council's platform. The council members, the leaders of the Velcorian Empire, stood in a row, their eyes fixed on her. Corin, the council leader, stepped forward, his expression cold and stern. He looked down at her with disdain, his lips curling into a small, contemptuous smile. "You see before you a traitor," Corin said, his voice carrying over the crowd. "A warrior who has broken the laws of our people. Lyra, who once served the Velcorian Empire with pride, has betrayed us. She has chosen to love a human, a species that is beneath us, and for this she must be punished." The crowd erupted in a chorus of boos and jeers. Lyra's heart clenched, but she forced herself to remain calm. She would not let them see her pain. Corin continued, "This is a warning to all who would consider defying our laws. Love is a weakness. It is a danger to our society, and it will not be tolerated." As he spoke, Lyra couldn't help but think of Marcus. What would he think of her now? Would he understand why she had done what she did? Would he hate her for bringing this upon herself? She didn't know, but she refused to let his memory be tainted by the cruelty of her people. She would carry her love for him in her heart, no matter what they did to her. The guard stepped forward, pulling at her chains, forcing her to stand. She was led to a small platform where she was bound, her arms held tightly by the chains that now defined her. The crowd watched in silence, waiting for the punishment to be carried out. Lyra stood tall, her face a mask of defiance. She would not show them her fear. She would not let them see how much they had hurt her. The Velcorians might have taken everything from her, but they could not take away her love for Marcus. They could not take away the memory of the moments they had shared together. As the final part of her punishment was about to begin, Lyra closed her eyes for a moment, feeling the weight of the crowd's judgment pressing down on her. But even in that moment, she could still hear Marcus's voice in her mind, whispering to her, reminding her that love was worth fighting for. And so, despite the cruelty of the Velcorian Empire, despite the scorn of her people, Lyra held on to the one thing that had kept her going through all the pain. The love she had for Marcus. No matter what happened next, no matter how the world around her might change, that love would never fade. The days passed in a blur of cold stone walls and silence. Lyra's mind raced with thoughts of Marcus, of the love they had shared, and the promise that no matter what happened, she would never forget him. The punishment had broken her physically, but it had not broken her spirit. No matter how harsh the Velcorians treated her, no matter how much they tried to crush her, she held on to the one thing that gave her strength, her love for Marcus. The dark, damp cell where she was kept was now her only world. The guards rarely spoke to her, and when they did, their words were harsh. They saw her as nothing more than a failure, a traitor to the Empire. But Lyra didn't care. Their judgment didn't matter to her anymore. Her heart belonged to Marcus, and no chain, no punishment could ever change that. It was in the middle of one long, quiet night when Lyra heard something she hadn't expected. Footsteps. Light at first, barely audible, then louder. Her pulse quickened as she sat up on the cold stone floor. Was it a guard, or was something else happening? The footsteps grew closer, and then she heard a faint click. The door to her cell creaked open, and a shadowy figure stood in the doorway. Lyra's breath caught in her throat. She didn't know whether to trust this figure or not, but she didn't have much time to think. Her heart raced with both fear and hope. Could it be Marcus? Lyra, a voice whispered softly, barely audible. It wasn't Marcus's voice, but it was familiar. Arden. Lyra whispered back, her voice trembling with disbelief. Arden was one of the few Velcorians who had never agreed with the Council's harsh punishment. He had always been kind to her, even when others saw her as an enemy. Arden stepped into the cell, his face half hidden in the shadows. "It's me," he said urgently. "I'm here to get you out." Lyra's heart skipped a beat. "Get me out," she repeated, incredulous. "But how?" "There's no time to explain. The Council has made their decision, but there are those among us who do not agree with their ways. We can't let them break you." Arden's words were like a lifeline to Lyra. She had thought she would never escape this place, but now there was hope. She didn't know how Arden had managed to get past the guards or why he was risking his own life to help her, but she didn't care. He was offering her a chance to escape, to be free again, and for the first time in weeks, she felt something other than despair. Lyra stood up slowly, her chains rattling as she moved. "But how will we get past the guards?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "There are too many of them." Arden smiled, a rare expression on his face. "I've taken care of that. We have to move quickly. There's a hidden passageway beneath this fortress. It leads to the surface, where you'll be able to escape." Lyra's heart raced with a mixture of excitement and fear. She had always been trained to fight and survive, but this was different. This was a chance to escape, a chance to be free with Marcus once again. She wasn't going to waste it. "Let's go," Lyra said, her voice firm and determined. She could feel the adrenaline rushing through her veins as Arden unlocked the chains that bound her wrists. They were finally free from the prison, but there was still much to be done. Arden led her through the dark hallways of the fortress, moving swiftly and silently. Every step they took felt like an eternity, each creak of the floorboards echoing in the silence. Lyra's heart pounded in her chest as they moved deeper into the fortress, but she forced herself to stay calm. They had to make it out. As they reached the hidden passageway, Arden motioned for Lyra to follow him down. The narrow passage was dimly lit, with barely enough room for them to move. Lyra could hear the faint sound of footsteps above them, and she held her breath, praying they wouldn't be caught. It was risky, dangerous even, but there was no turning back now. The passage led them to an old, forgotten door at the back of the fortress. Arden unlocked it with a small key, and the door creaked open. The cold night air hit Lyra's face as they stepped outside, the moonlight shining brightly above them. For the first time in what felt like forever, Lyra breathed freely. She was outside, away from the fortress, and on her way to freedom. But even as they made their escape, Lyra knew they weren't out of danger yet. The Velcorian Empire would stop at nothing to find her, to punish her for her defiance. But in that moment, she didn't care. She had escaped, and that was all that mattered. She had to keep moving, keep going until she was far enough away from the Empire's reach. Arden led her through the woods, his steps quick and sure. They had a long way to go before they reached the safety of the rebels' hideout. Lyra's thoughts kept drifting to Marcus. What would he think when he saw her again? Would he be able to forgive her for the risks she had taken? She didn't know, but she would find out soon enough. All that mattered was that she was still alive, still fighting for the love she had with him. "We're almost there," Arden said, his voice steady. Lyra could hear the urgency in his words, but there was also hope, a hope that she hadn't felt in a long time. They were free for now. And with that hope, Lyra pushed forward, determined to find Marcus and to be with him again. No matter what it took, she would never give up on the love that had once been a secret. And now it was the thing that kept her alive. The cold night air felt like a new beginning to Lyra. It had been weeks since she had felt the freedom of the open sky, since she had been able to breathe without the heavy weight of chains and harsh judgments surrounding her. The sound of the wind rustling through the trees, the soft crunch of the forest floor beneath her boots, all of it felt like a dream that was finally coming true. As she walked through the dense forest with Arden, every step brought her closer to freedom. The dark shadows of the trees seemed to watch over them, offering some measure of protection. She didn't know where they were heading, but she trusted Arden. He had been the one to help her escape, the one person who had been brave enough to defy the Velkorian Council and give her a chance at survival. He had risked his life to set her free. And for that, she was forever grateful. They continued walking through the forest, the sound of their footsteps muted by the thick underbrush. Lyra could feel the tension in the air, both from the escape and the uncertainty that lay ahead. She didn't know how far they had to go before they reached the rebel hideout, or what would happen once they got there. The only thing she knew for certain was that she was no longer a prisoner. She was free, and for the first time in a long time, she felt like she had a future ahead of her. Lyra's mind kept drifting back to Marcus, the image of his face, the sound of his voice, the way he had made her feel. Those memories were what kept her moving forward. She didn't know if he would still be waiting for her, if he would even want to see her again after everything that had happened. The thought of losing him was unbearable, but she knew she couldn't give up. She had to find him. She had to show him that her love for him was real, and that she was willing to fight for it no matter what. "Do you think they'll come after me?" Lyra asked, her voice barely more than a whisper. Arden didn't immediately answer. He seemed lost in thought for a moment, and then he spoke. "The Velkorians will stop at nothing to find you. They'll send soldiers, trackers, whatever it takes. They'll want to make an example of you, to show that defying their laws has consequences." Lyra's heart sank. The thought of the Velkorian Empire coming after her filled her with dread. She had escaped, but the danger was far from over. She would have to keep moving, keep hiding, and hope that the rebels could offer her some kind of protection. But even as the weight of the situation pressed down on her, Lyra refused to let fear control her. She had fought for her love before, and she would do it again. She would not let the Velkorians take away the one thing that had given her strength, the love she shared with Marcus. As they walked, the dense trees began to thin out, and the path ahead grew clearer. They were nearing the edge of the forest, where the rebel camp lay hidden. The camp was supposed to be a safe haven, a place where those who opposed the Velkorian Empire could gather and fight back. Lyra didn't know what to expect, but she was ready to face whatever came next. Arden led her toward a small, secluded clearing. In the center of the clearing stood a small wooden structure, surrounded by tents and makeshift barricades. The rebel camp was simple, but it had everything they needed: shelter, food, and a community of people who were willing to fight for freedom. As they entered the camp, Lyra was greeted by a few of the rebels who had been standing watch. They exchanged brief nods, acknowledging Arden's arrival. The atmosphere in the camp was tense but hopeful. There was a sense of solidarity, of people coming together to fight for a common cause. Lyra could see the determination in their eyes, the same determination she had felt when she first decided to defy the Velkorian Empire. Arden turned to Lyra. "This is where we'll stay for now. You'll be safe here, at least for the time being. But we need to move quickly. The Council will have sent out word about your escape by now. We can't afford to stay in one place for too long." Lyra nodded. She understood the risks. The Velkorians would never stop hunting her. But for the first time since her capture, she felt like she had a chance to fight back. She wasn't alone anymore. She had the rebels by her side, and she had her love for Marcus to keep her going. That night, as Lyra lay on a makeshift cot in the small wooden structure, she thought about what came next. She could hear the sounds of the camp. People talking in low voices, the crackle of a fire, the movement of footsteps outside. It was all so different from the cold, silent prison she had just escaped. It felt like a new world, one where she could make her own choices, free from the rules and expectations that had bound her for so long. But despite the new beginnings, there was still one question that lingered in her mind. What about Marcus? Would he be safe? Would he understand why she had risked everything for him? She couldn't answer those questions yet, but she promised herself that she would find him, no matter the cost. She would fight for him, just as she had fought for her freedom. As Lyra closed her eyes, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders, but also the strength of her resolve. She was no longer a prisoner. She was free, and she was ready to face whatever came next. The Velkorian Empire might still be hunting her, but she would not let fear control her. She would fight for love, for freedom, and for a future with Marcus. The rebel camp was quiet, but Lyra couldn't sleep. Her mind raced with thoughts of Marcus. The camp's warmth and the soft crackle of the fire outside couldn't bring her the comfort she longed for. The silence of the night was heavy, filled with questions she couldn't answer, questions that haunted her. Would Marcus still be waiting for her? Had he even heard about her escape? She had left so suddenly, and she had no way of knowing where he was or what he was doing. The only thing she knew for certain was that she couldn't let her love for him fade. She couldn't live without him. Lyra sat up on the cot, her fingers tracing the edges of her torn uniform. Her mind wandered back to the moments they had shared, the quiet conversations, the stolen glances, the gentle touches. Those memories were like lifelines, pulling her forward, keeping her from sinking into despair. No matter what, she would find him. She couldn't give up on their love, no matter how dangerous it became. Lyra, a voice called softly from the entrance of the shelter. She turned quickly, her heart skipping a beat. It was Arden. He had been a constant presence since her escape, offering advice and support, and she trusted him more than anyone else in this strange new world. "Is everything all right?" Arden asked, stepping inside and glancing at her with concern. "I can't sleep," Lyra replied, her voice tinged with frustration. "I keep thinking about Marcus. What if something happened to him? What if he doesn't even know where I am?" Arden hesitated before answering. "You don't know that for sure. He might be safe. You can't let the unknown control you. You need to trust that whatever happens, you'll find your way." Lyra nodded slowly, trying to calm the storm inside her. Arden was right, of course. She had to focus on the future, not the uncertainty of what she didn't know. But her heart couldn't stop worrying. He had promised Marcus that she would never leave him, and now that promise felt like a weight she couldn't bear. "Do you think it's possible to go back for him?" Lyra asked quietly, looking at Arden with determination in her eyes. "Do you think I could go back to Earth and find him?" Arden's expression softened, and he walked over to where she sat, sitting beside her on the cot. "Lyra, I know your love for him is powerful, but you can't risk your life and the lives of others just for one person. The Velkorians are after you, and they'll stop at nothing to capture you. Going back to Earth could put you in even more danger." Lyra's eyes filled with sorrow. She had known this was a possibility. The Velkorian Empire was ruthless, and the danger she faced was very real. But the thought of leaving Marcus behind, of not being with him, was unbearable. She had to find him. She had to make things right. "I can't live without him, Arden," Lyra whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "He's everything to me." Arden placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch warm and reassuring. "I understand," he said quietly, "but you have to think of the bigger picture. Your love for Marcus is strong, but your life is just as important. We need to find a way to make sure you stay safe, so you can be with him, without the threat of the Velkorians hanging over you." Lyra sat in silence for a moment, processing his words. She knew he was right, but it was hard to accept. She had never been one to run from a fight. Her warrior spirit had always pushed her to face challenges head-on. But now, for the first time, she felt torn. The love she felt for Marcus was the greatest thing she had ever known, and yet it also made her vulnerable. "I don't know how to live without him," Lyra said softly, her voice breaking. Arden didn't answer right away. Instead, he leaned forward, his eyes serious. "You may not have to live without him," he said slowly. "There's a possibility. A chance that he might be able to join us here, with the rebels. If he's still alive, if he's still searching for you, we can help him. We can find a way to bring him to you." The words hit Lyra like a wave, washing over her with a mixture of hope and disbelief. "You really think that's possible?" she asked, her voice filled with wonder. Arden nodded. "It won't be easy. We'll have to be careful. But if Marcus is willing to take the risk, we can help him. You're not alone in this, Lyra. We'll fight for your love, just as we're fighting for freedom." Lyra felt a spark of hope ignite inside her. The idea that she might be able to see Marcus again, that they could be together, filled her with determination. This wasn't over. She would find a way to be with him. "Thank you, Arden," she said, her voice steady once more. "Thank you for helping me, for believing in me." Arden gave her a small, reassuring smile. "You've already shown us all what true strength is, Lyra. Your love for Marcus is the kind of love that can change everything. It's the kind of love that gives us hope, and that, in itself, is more powerful than anything the Velkorian Empire can throw at us." Lyra's heart swelled with gratitude. She had been through so much, humiliation, pain, and fear, but in this moment, she knew one thing for sure. Her love for Marcus would guide her through whatever came next. She wasn't giving up on him. She would fight for him, just as she would fight for her own freedom. "Let's do it," Lyra said, her voice filled with resolve. "Let's bring him here. We'll make this right. Together." Arden nodded, his expression one of quiet admiration. "We will. Together." As Lyra stood up, she felt a renewed sense of purpose. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore. She was fighting for the love that had changed her life, for the future she still believed was possible. And with the support of the rebels and her newfound strength, she knew that no matter how difficult the journey, they would find a way to bring her and Marcus together again.